You know, when I first saw this film, it struck me as such an actor's piece, and I know you don't rehearse in perhaps the standard expected way. How did you guys start working together to build this relationship that really popped for me on screen?
I finished the script, which I wrote with Mauricio Zacharias, and the first person we offered, part 2 was Alfred, and he got involved early on. It was about a 9-month process to cast and get the film financed. And along the road, I ran into these people, and I think for different reasons, Alfred and John have known each other for 20 years, and they both had lived in LA as most of their adult lives, and had long marriages and histories that were very similar in certain ways. So I had the advantage of beginning where there was already a place to start, and that they had a lot together, and they really. I don't rehearse in a conventional way, but we do talk a lot. And Marisa and I met and talked about the script individually. I never like to hear the lines read before we start shooting. So there's something that happens on the set, which is what you get to experience in the audience, which is I hope has some connections to real life and how real life feels.
How was that for you guys? Was it surprising? Was it scary? Was it you've worked like this before?
Well, I don't like to rehearse, so I was happy with that as well.
Because it ruined something for you, or?
Well, a lot of times it's just kind of BS anyway, really. It's like, let's rehearse, but really where it's you're not really talking about the piece, and you're not actually even reading the line. Like, it's an idea of rehearsal. People don't really know what to do a lot of times in film. They call it rehearsal, but it just winds up to be like, having a soda together. I mean, which is okay to just talk, but it just has this like weird, false. Nothing really ever comes of it in my experience. I mean, have a drink together, great. Get to know each other, great. Or actually rehearse. But it winds up to be in this like amorphous area that I don't think is like that serves so well. So I was happy to just do it his way, which was easy, really lovely. Did you rehearse a lot in movies?
Sometimes. I mean, it all depends on the way a director works. I remember when I did World According to Garp, which with George Roy Hill, who was very old school, came out of 50s live television. We literally had 2 weeks of rehearsal with the
tape
sets,
on the floor.
Tape on the floor. We did run-throughs of the script with George and Miros Andracek, his cinematographer, hovering around us.
We did that with Lumet too, so
yeah,
that must have been the...
Lumet is very much in that vein, and I loved working that way. I'm a theater actor primarily, and I'm a glutton for rehearsal. Certainly, we rehearsed Third Rock from the Sun because it was razor sharp precise, because we only had 5 days and we had to perform in front of a live audience. That said, I mean, you go on whatever trip the filmmaker takes you on. I loved working in Ira's mode. He really gave Alfred and me and Marisa the gift of his time. Prior to shooting, I was working in Calgary, Alberta on another film, and he came out. He took a trip by himself for 2 days, 2 days when I didn't work, and we just spent the time going through the script, devising very detailed backstory for the George and Ben relationship, sort of mined my history for everything that was useful. I talked about my boyhood in Ohio, my aspirations to be a painter when I was young, the art schools that I was hoping to go to, which we decided Ben had gone to. All of these things just arose from conversation. And Ira laid out his modus operandi from the very beginning. We would go through the script and say the lines, but he would instruct me not to perform it at all. Just use reading the lines out loud as a jumping off place for conversation.
During this early period.
Yeah, during the early period. Then when I arrived on the set, I don't know, it was like putting on a comfortable piece of clothing. suddenly acting the role.
I just want to add one thing in case anyone wants to try this at home, which is I block the scenes, and we do the blocking on the location on the day of the shoot, and then you end up shooting those scenes, you know, different takes, different sizes. You shoot 20 or sometimes 30 times, so you're not, and you're developing action, and you're refining, and you're making adjustments, and you're doing all the things that one would do within a rehearsal. It's just happening in the same time, so there's not a lot of time for, what I don't want is a lot of time for reflection, because that's not how we live our lives. So I don't want people to, you know, I feel that the words motivation and subtext should be banned from a film set, truthfully, because those are not how we live. And so I'm trying to capture something that happens that is unspeakable between people. It can't be said.
And you also gave us you also always asked us if we wanted another take.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Which is just, he would say he has everything he needs, but if you want to do it again.
I always feel like you don't know what an actor can give you, and if they know something that they'd like to try, I've never said no to another take. It just doesn't make any sense to me, because you don't actually know what that thing that might happen that last time, if someone feels they have something else that they want to express.
Is there something that you deliberately left them to figure out on their own after all of this discussion and
everything? Really. I mean, and I think I'm very attentive, and I take care of my actors with great care, and I think what they're doing is very precious and unique. These people, particularly. So I'm like a therapist. I'm really paying attention, but they're creating the characters within the construct of the world that we've created, which is production design and costume design and background acting and all these kind of things, and the script, which is guiding this kind of larger blueprint. They're filling in everything.
And a very, very precise script, which the only thing that was improvised was the Dungeons and Dragons game.
Yeah.
Because that's how you play Dungeons and Dragons.
who knew?
Yeah.
I'll give you a perfect example. The day when I had to choose which sun hat to wear. You know, Ira gave me my choice. So that was, so I can take
Wow, what a giving director you are.
Well, you can't it's actually an interesting thing, because it's very similar, by the way, to working with, I work with a wonderful co-writer, Marisa Tomei, who knows that if I don't understand something, I can't direct it. So ultimately, I'm the boss. There's nothing that I can't direct any line or any scene that doesn't make sense to me very internally. And I feel the same way with an actor, is that I can't tell you, if you don't get it, then you don't get it, and we have to figure out something else, because there's no middle place where they can do something for me.
When we met at Sundance, John, you said that this was like a whole new you. You had never seen yourself perform in this way. Can you tell me more about that?
I just feel, well, I'm a lot older, but for one thing, I'm an old actor now. I have to get used to that. And I was playing even older than I am. There was an ease and a sort of unperformed, untheatrical. I'm trying to speak objectively. It's very odd to see yourself up on a screen, but it did have a feeling of newness. I would say the closest performance to Ben Hull in this film that I've ever done was Roberta Muldoon in World According to Garp, 30 years ago. But that was a transsexual ex-football player. I was in a long wig and women's clothing. This was me. This was just me up there. And I found it very disarming and kind of a relief. When the first time I met Ira to talk about the script, I said, it would be so wonderful to just not feel the need to act. That's how I reacted to the script.
John and I have been on, and Marisa, we've been talking about the film since it opened in Sundance, and I always disagree with him at this moment, because to me that's great acting. that I can't be myself on screen and make it compelling, and it's not yourself. That it's just a different register, and I think that's where, as actors, you all really met on this film to kind of do something that was pulling something that was complex and authentic, I think also I benefited, and this was not something I could have guessed in advance or known in advance, by casting people like these two, that I got great comic actors. And that is a really deep part of the film. It's not just the surface, it's the depth, is the humor, and the sophistication of humor that I think I get in a scene like where they're trying to, when Marissa's trying to write.
I wanted
And
to ask about that.
I couldn't have written the timing that you have in that scene.
How did you play that? How did you work that? Because that's actually my favorite scene
Ours
in
too.
the movie. Is it really?
We're very proud of that. It's our pride and joy.
There's
That's
just
our
this
baby.
underlying, the teeth grinding, and he's talking, and
That damn tea kettle whistling. We can't take credit for the tea kettle. That was post-production.
Fine. Well, how did you, Marissa? Did you like that? Were you aware that that was kind of clicking as you were shooting that, or?
I don't remember so well how we got to that. I mean, I remember the scene being very well. Did we cut it down? I think there were more.
Yeah.
There were more exchanges. There were more interruptions, and so we shortened it.
Yeah.
That's what
We
I
shortened on
recall.
set. And
On
then,
set.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I have, occasionally when you're shooting a film and you watch performance, there's a couple of scenes, and this one also, because there's a lot that's between dialogues. As I said, the dialogue is pretty strict and we follow the script, but there's a level of emotional improvisation that happens that is very exciting to observe. And there's a couple of scenes in the film that are created in silence. Perhaps one of the most significant is the scene with the boy at the end. And you have Marissa, a scene following the reunion of Ben and George when she's alone in the bed with her husband, and you have that reunion with John and Fred, and all of these are places where the dialogue disappears, and yet I feel like this, these are incredible performers who are able to sort of write paragraphs for you as an artist within those spaces. And that's something that I really love to observe, and I think audiences do too, because I think they can it's very intimate. Those are private moments, and there's a kind of privilege you feel when it's done so well to be close to them. So
This was a truly low-budget, independent film, which is how Ira's fortunate enough to so far be able to make his movies. You guys you clearly work in both big studio production and indie film. Is there I guess the obvious question is, it's much harder work, but I imagine it to be rewarding in its own way. How do you choose, I'm going to do this sort of project now or not, or is it completely script?
It was a curious moment because I was offered two things in exactly the same time period. One was Interstellar, Christopher Nolan's next film, and the other was Love is Strange, a small part in a great big movie and a big part in a very small movie. And I was going to have to choose between the two, and I decided to do Love is Strange, and then my agent got involved, and somehow or other I got to do both. So,
I knew they had a purpose.
But
Just the one
The
guy.
one, exactly.
But in this case, it was the script just meant so much to me, and the part was so fabulous. Interstellar is going to be a stupendous film, and once again, I'm going to be the father of a major movie star. Or in this case, the father-in-law, so it's a little different.
How about yourself?
I find that I prefer doing this kind of movie, but it can be difficult, and budget-wise, and just I mean, even like simple things. Like a lot of times, I think acting is really just like energy management. Like you have to keep your energy at a certain open and that fountain of listening and presence so ready throughout so many hours. So a lot of times it's like, what are you eating? Just whatever can keep my body going. So, but things like that come into play when you're on a small movie and you might be eating crap sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's those little things that are different between a studio movie and this, but the intimacy and the working together, and usually the themes that you're talking about when you know something is about an idea that's interesting, that you want to turn over, that you want to have conversations about, that we want to have this conversation about. That's intriguing to me, and that actually feeds me. ultimately.
We do have to,
Right
it
around.
is a big leap of faith. I mean, we knew we were doing something good, but you did have to be patient and put up with a lot of things you don't have to put up with on a big budget film. For example, my very first day of shooting, a dear young girl, a film student from Hofstra, I believe. Nothing against Hofstra. She was not deeply experienced. She picked up Alfred, and she picked up me, and then she wrote her address into the little
In the car.
GPS.
Picked her
Then
up
she
to the-
took us way, way out to South Brooklyn when we were due in Jackson Heights, Queens, and we arrived 2.5 hours late to the set. My first day of shooting, because she'd put the wrong GPS in. This tends not to happen on a
Sounds
big
lack of
budget film.
experience.
Right. Teamsters also have some.
Fortunately, I'm just an actor, so I'm not responsible.
And actually, I hear this story and I'm just like, oh, because I can remember the sinking feeling when I heard that news. Jaw drop. You know, it's time is money. Time is all you got. You know, I have to say, in defense of independent film, I've made one larger film and many small films, and they're not, it's not that, from my perspective, it's still very human. They're all, and I try to create an atmosphere where I'm very conscious of my role as a producer also. I'm aware, and I'm embraced with whatever the economics are, and I try to create an atmosphere which is not chaotic, and that is that there's, you know, and I'll do rewrites if I feel like I'm pushing towards too much for a day, because I don't want to be in that. That's not a very good creative atmosphere, and I feel like that's my responsibility. So, you know, and I think that that's also where you get the trust and the kind of, for these kind of performances. That's a good question. You know, I cast well. That's the beginning. And I try, you know, I do actually create for my actors timelines. So in single pages, which are narratives that we can all look at, because you don't shoot in order, to remember where you came from and where you're going, where the scene, where was the last time we saw you as a character, and then what's going to happen next. So you have a sense of place that's important in your own story. So I think the film Love is Strange is really about the, you know, strange being a kind of Shakespearean term for magical and unique. And I really try to understand the unique place that each character in the film, whatever the size of their role, has within that moment. Then there's this kind of, I certainly didn't get Marisa into, I didn't say very much to say, she knew that it was a complicated situation, and she knew that it was a complicated marriage and her complicated observations, but I don't want to talk about it, because then they're going to be playing the things we discuss. I mean, I'm sort of saying, trust me. I'm not a new director. This will work. You know your lines well and deeply, and you have to internalize those lines, and that's a lot of work that an actor does off stage. And then you become aware of what different actors need, and different actors do need subtle differences within the day of production. So, you know, in some films, one actor will be really prime on take 3, and you know someone else really gets going around take 7, and so you'll start with the close-up on the actor who's going to burn out earlier, and the other actor has the time to build. So you're attending to those kind of differences in a space. You really want to give the actors whatever they need to be there. And I will say, just like in the moment, we are actually having discussions about things. So for example, I'm just thinking of Charlie in the stairwell, this young actor, and I definitely would say at some point after this couple of takes, I'd be like, I need you to go to a point where your tears break. I need that break. And that's about it. But he got it. He got the idea that he needed to let go. So I'm watching things like that and making comments. to me, the film was always about generations and about the different perspectives each of us have on love, given kind of what chapter we might be in. So you have these 3 different stages. The older couple, Ben and George, you have Marissa and Darren, who are very much in the middle, looking at questions of what do I expect, these midlife crisis questions of what are the boundaries of my my future, and what should I hope for. And I think that then you have this kid who's really learning about love, familial love, romantic love in some level for the first time. And that was really, we wanted, Mauricio and I wanted to create a multi-generational family epic in a very tight, crowded New York apartment. Like, that was our goal. And the film, to me, is also very deeply about sort of what we teach each other in a situation as a community, as family members. And so this idea of passing on the stories and the emotions was what I was interested in. I was interested in loss and cycles of life, but I really am not in this film very interested in death. Death was not the story I had to tell, and I had very little to add to it. Well, with the kind of leads, you don't do auditions. Yeah. But that's still, you got to make choices based on what I do when I cast leads, and I don't think I've told you guys. I watch a lot of YouTube. It's very interesting what you can reveal in things like this. Like, if I found this online, I'm going to have a really good sense of who these people are.
So this is our audition for our next movie.
It's the last one of these you ever did.
Never thought of that.
No, really. I mean, you can get to know. It's like being with an actor in a room. So and I want to cast people, not actors. So I do that with my leads, and I want to see. Obviously, I need to know their work as well. With the other actors, it's pretty conventional in the sense that I do sides, and they read the sides, but I never cast anyone who doesn't 100% nail it in their audition, because I never assume that I can get anyone, any actor of any experience, from a non-professional to these kind of actors. I can't teach them anything that's going to make them a different kind of actor. You know, it's all got to be there.
I think certainly in the case of this film and film in general, you sort of have to bring yourself to the moment at exactly the right time. It's not something you can carefully plot. You can be very moved by what you read and think, oh boy, this is going to be a big moment, you know. But it's best not to calculate too much. And in the case of this particular film, I knew exactly how this scene with Marisa was going to play when I read it, because it was wonderfully written. But so much happened on that day, and you just sort of count on it or hope for it. And in terms of very emotional things with Fred, this guy was amazing to work with. He is so emotionally open, so secure, so unself-conscious. He has a just boundless humor and compassion. He has everything you want. And so everything just came easy. I just knew it was going to be there. I never felt afraid of a scene. I never felt remotely self-conscious in a scene with him. And you know, we're 2 straight guys playing 2 old queens. And we just loved each other. We felt completely physically comfortable with each other. And so I just really, from the very first day, I just knew it was going to be there when the time came. So preparation was irrelevant. And I think and Ira wanted it that way.
But I approached it very differently. I mean, you have to do everything in the moment on a set. Like he's saying, you know, really, timing is you just have to be ready at the right time on a film set. But I do like to have a few things in my back pocket, like if I know I have to break open, or if I hope to bring that to a scene. Sometimes I just write a few things down, not heavy things, just things that I could maybe touch in on. But you never know what's going to happen in the scene where I do get upset because my husband hasn't been kind of taking carrying his weight. I think that was maybe one that I asked for an extra take, actually. So that's what happened on that one. But he was okay, but Ira was all right, but I kind of wanted to go farther. And then another example is when Alfred comes back, well, George comes back, and it's been raining, and they've been separated, and they embrace in our kitchen. Well, we ran out of time shooting that day, so we shot the embrace, but we didn't shoot our coverage, and then we didn't shoot it for a long time. So it was like a day or maybe 2 days later, and it was devastatingly, like, to me, I was like, you can't ask me to do this. How am I going to do this? But you have to do it, and so basically, John, in his generosity, just stood across from me saying like this. But I don't know if that really helped or didn't help. I mean, it was like so you have to be able to kind of come up. You have to have things in your back pocket and somehow.
I completely forgot.
I want you to know that last night we had a screening, and 2 people came up to me and said that moment and your expression on their face was their favorite moment in the film. So you did something right there.
It was me off camera.
Well, on that, I'd like to thank our sponsors. You see them behind us. Eat and drink them, please. Thank Ira Sachs, Marisa Tomei, John Lithgow. Love is Strange opens Friday. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
All right.